All right, troops. Usual sound. Go check. Let me know how it's coming through. All good? Awesome sauce. Now, we were going to look at the Batman thing. However, it occurred to me that we can't quite leave Young yet. So next Sunday, we'll look a bit more at Grant Morrison. Maybe spend a bit more time with Grant. And what we need to look at with Young is ties in very nicely with world events that's currently going on. Now, I must confess, last night I had way too much fun, so I stayed up way past my bedtime and drunk far too much whiskey. So I might be a little bit less coherent than I normally am. Carson, does this mean that if I was a slacker that I have a few more days to do homework? It does. And I do apologize to anyone that had to cram in the homework in time for this talk, but I will revisit that stuff. Okay, so where to begin? Yeah, whiskey hangover. Tell me about it. If you remember, one of the outcomes from this retreat was to be your capacity, for you to cultivate a capacity to recognize what belongs to the old aeon and what belongs to the new aeon, and what it is that's actually happening in the world and what's unfolding. And there's a key element that you need to understand to be able to do that. And it's there in Crowley's work. However, most people who follow Crowley's teaching tend to get it upside down or the wrong way around. But it's also explicitly stated in Jung's work. So I thought what I'd do is I would revisit a tiny little bit in the most ridiculous book of all time. It's actually a regular size book. I'm just a very tiny man in a really small library. It's just ridiculous. I need to get the reader's version. It's just, look at it. Oh dear. Now, just bear with me a second. All right. Now, I know that some of you might not have read the Red Book, and I didn't give you advance warning, did I, to look at this? But it's okay. I mean, I'm only going to read a little bit of it. And this is the kind of work that you have to spend a lot of time with anyway. So if you're going to buy it, it's something you'd be coming back to anyway. It takes reflection over a sustained period of time to get the most out of it. It's not something you can just read in a weekend and then be done with. Here we go. Right. So at the very beginning of Liber Novus, the Red Book, under the section called The Way of What Is to Come. Now, famously, Jung had visions of what would happen during the war. So there's some of that stuff in here. But like I said, I'm only going to read some little small pieces. So this is under The Way of What Is to Come. And this version, I don't know what it's like in the reader's version, but in this version, there are sections that are in italics. And this is the first section in italics that isn't in line, for those that want to keep up. So here we go. Right. But the supreme meaning is the path, the way and the bridge to what is to come. That is the God yet to come. It is not the coming God himself, but his image which appears in the supreme meaning. God is an image, and those who worship him must worship him in the images of the supreme meaning. The supreme meaning is not a meaning and not an absurdity. It is image and force in one, magnificence, and force together. The supreme meaning is the beginning and the end. It is the bridge of going across and fulfillment. So you can see he's lining up opposites and saying it's both these things. The other gods died of their temporality, yet the supreme meaning never dies. It turns into meaning and then into absurdity, and out of the fire and blood of their collision, the supreme meaning rises up, rejuvenated and new. Again, conjunction of opposites. The image of God has a shadow. The supreme meaning is real and casts a shadow. For what can be actual and corporeal and have no shadow? The shadow is nonsense. It lacks force and has no continued existence through itself. But nonsense is the inseparable and undying brother of the supreme meaning. So again, we've got opposites, but here you can see he's spelling out the difference between the supreme meaning and its shadow, and the relationship between the two. The shadow has no continued existence through itself. So if you remember last time we spoke about evil being a parasite that is a real parasite, but it doesn't have any being of its own. If you remember. So here it is, spelled out in the Red Book. Like plants, so men also grow. The tree analogy. Some in the light, others in the shadows. There are many who need the shadows and not the light. The image of God throws a shadow that is just as great as itself. You'll know what that means if you've had to deal with an existential or spiritual problem, and you face the existential terror of the annihilation of the self. The supreme meaning is great and small. It is as wide as the space of the starry heaven and as narrow as the cell of the living body. So again, opposites. So he's talking about the way that is to come. It's to do with the God. There's the image of the God, and there's the shadow of that God, and the relationship between the two, and that human beings are like a plant. So all familiar stuff, hopefully. Right. And now there's a section at the very end of the way which is to come, where he says, believe me, it is no teaching and no instruction that I give you. On what basis should I presume to teach you? I give you news of the way of this man, but not of your own way. My path is not your path. Therefore I cannot teach you. The way is within us, but not in gods, nor in teachings, nor in laws. Within us is the way, the truth, and the life. Woe betide those who live by way of examples. Life is not with them. If you live according to an example, you thus live the life of that example. But who should live your own life if not yourself? So live yourselves. The signposts have fallen. Unblazed trails lie before us. My tongue shall wither if I serve up laws, if I prattle to you about teachings. Those who seek such will leave my table hungry. Do not be greedy to gobble up the fruits of foreign fields. Right. So you can see what he's saying is, he's not coming to teach you anything. He's coming to what is he coming to do? He seems to be well, he said he's not come to teach, but he seems to be teaching us that what we need to do is look inside ourselves to discover the way, and that if we follow the way, even though it's the same way, it's going to be different for each of us. My path is not your path, therefore I cannot teach you. The way's within us. Now, what does that sound like? That sounds exactly like, doesn't it, the book of the law? Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Do not be, and this idea of presuming to teach you, that means he doesn't know what the answer is. He's not coming to give you an answer to a problem. Now that should remind you of the Magia practices, where if you ask me a question, I often respond with, how would I know? How would I know? I could tweak that and say, how could I possibly know what the answer is to that question? Because the question is specifically related to your way, to your path. Now, I can share in that with you, but you have the details and I don't have them. So I can't answer any of the questions that you have. Do not be greedy to gobble up the fruits of foreign fields. Now, this is a reference to other traditions, to traditions that don't belong in the West, or rather, traditions that are not the Western tradition. So that's what it means to be greedy, to gobble up the fruits of foreign fields, to go and look in these other traditions and to try and gobble up the wisdom that you might get from those traditions. So this chimes in very nicely, doesn't it, with what Peter Kingsley's main song is, as he likes to put it, which is there's a Western tradition and we have to honor that tradition. Do you not know that you yourselves are the fertile acre which bears everything that avails you? Again, back to the agriculture analogy. Yet who today knows this? Who knows the way to the eternally fruitful climes of the soul? You seek the way through mere appearances. You study books and give ear to all kinds of opinion. What good is all that? There is only one way, and that is your way. Only one law exists, and that is your law. Only one truth exists, and that is your truth. Again, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. You seek the path, I warn you away from my own. It can also be the wrong way for you. May each go his own way. I will be no savior, no lawgiver, no master teacher unto you. You are no longer little children. Right, so remember that. You are no longer little children. So that's that implies, doesn't it, that people were little children, but now then they're not little children any longer. And not being little children any longer, it's now up to each person to discover the path or the way for themselves by looking inwardly. One should not turn people into sheep, but sheep into people. The spirit of the depth demands this, who is beyond present and past. So the spirit of the depths is proclaiming, do what thou wilt. Speak and write for those who want to listen and read, but do not run after men, so that you do not soil the dignity of humanity. It is a rare good. A sad demise in dignity is better than an undignified healing. A sad demise in dignity is better than an undignified healing. So these sentiments, they're echoing, aren't they, some of the more apparently challenging passages in the book of the law. Compassion is the vice of kings. Treat each person that you meet as a god. And if you do that and treat them with that dignity, then you don't have to worry about harming them. You do them the dignity of treating them as if they are also a divine soul or a star. So it's about dignity. That's one of the values. Whoever wants to be a doctor of the soul sees people as being sick. He offends human dignity. So again, I've mentioned this a number of times, haven't I, over the course of these talks. It's this idea of you being sick, or of there being a sick God, and so on. It is presumptuous to say that man is sick. Whoever wants to be the soul's shepherd treats people like sheep. He violates human dignity. It is insolent to say that people are like sheep. So you are against the many, if you remember that quote from the book of the law. Who gives you the right to say that man is sick and a sheep? Give him human dignity so he may find his ascendancy or downfall his way. Giving laws, wanting improvements, making things easier has all become wrong and evil. May each one seek out his own way. The way leads to mutual love in community. Men will come to see and feel the similarity and commonality of their ways. Laws and teachings held in common compel people to solitude so that they may escape the pressure of undesirable contact. But solitude makes people hostile and venomous. Therefore, give people dignity and let each of them stand apart so that each may find his own fellowship and love it. Power stands against power, contempt against contempt, love against love. Give humanity dignity. So he keeps saying it, doesn't he? Dignity. Give humanity dignity and trust that life will find the better way. So, here we have this new book, this red book, Liber Novus. It's saying the same thing in principle, isn't it, as the Book of the Law. So you've got two different prophets, Crowley and Young, both bringing a message said in different ways, apparently very different on the surface as individuals, but they're all talking about this new era, the end of the Christian era and the beginning of a new one, and how it's different from what came before. And it has something to do with not being little children anymore. Right, here's the last bit I'm going to read. Now, see if you can, this might be confusing at first, but I'll try and simplify it. Oh, here we go. The spirit of this time, of course, allowed me to believe in my reason. He let me see myself in the image of a leader with ripe thoughts. But the spirit of the depths teaches me that I am a servant, in fact, the servant of a child. This dictum was repugnant to me and I hated it. Again, echoing Crowley, he hated the teaching in the Book of the Law. But I had to recognize and accept that my soul is a child and that my God in my soul is a child. So here we go in the, what section is this? This is under soul and God. Again, the italics part at the end. If you are boys, your God is a woman. If you are women, your God is a boy. If you are men, your God is a maiden. The God is where you are not. So, it is wise that one has a God. This serves for your perfection. A maiden is the pregnant future. A boy is the engendering future. A woman is having given birth. A man is having engendered. What does that mean? It means that if you're an adult, there is no future. If you're a child, it's the beginning of the future. So if you remember last time when we talked about Phanes and Ion and the magical child, of course, it's the in Crowley's terminology, it's the aeon of the crowned and conquering child. The child is always newly emerging. It's the newly emerging divine child. And you can understand that as something that's happening in time. But more fundamental than that, it's the actual nature of the divine, is that it's newly emerging. That's what its actual nature is. That's what one of its qualities is that it's always perpetually newly emerging. And as such, it's the only thing that changes, even though it's that which is still. So if you remember, I said that counterintuitive thing last time. Anyway, I'll carry on. So if you are childlike beings now, your God will descend from the height of ripeness to age and death. right? So if you are childlike now, then your God is sick and dying. But if you are developed beings, so grown up, if you are developed beings, having engendered or given birth, in body or in soul, so your God rises from the radiant cradle to the incalculable height of the future, to the maturity and fullness of the coming time. So, if you're childlike, I'm going to simplify it. If you're childlike, your God is like an old man. But if you're a mature human being, then your God is a divine child. He who still has life before him is a child. He who lives in the present is developed. If you thus live all that you can live, you are developed. You might say, if you're fulfilling your individual law, or your will, rather, then that's you living all that you can live, that you're developed. And therefore, there's going to be, your God will be a divine child. He who is a child in this time, his God dies. So if you're a child in this time, your God dies. He who is developed in this time, his God continues to live. The spirit of the depths teaches this mystery. Prosperous and woeful are those whose God is developed. Prosperous and woeful are those whose God is a child. What is better, that man has life ahead of him, or that God does? I know no answer. Live. The unavoidable decides. The spirit of the depths taught me that my life is encompassed by the divine child. From his hand everything unexpected came to me, everything living. This child is what I feel as an eternally springing youth in me. In childish men, you feel the hopeless transience. All that you saw passing is yet to come for him. His future is full of transience. But the transience of things coming toward you has never yet experienced a human meaning. Your continuing to live is a living onward. You engender and give birth to what is to come. You are fecund. You live onward. The childish is unfruitful. What is to come to him is what already has been engendered and already withered. It does not live onward. Right, so does that make sense to everyone? Everyone still with me? Let me know in the chat. So just to say it again, if you're childish, then your God is old and is dying. If you're developed, then your God is a divine child. Yep. Okay. Now, so it's very common for people who are interested in this new aeon, especially in the terms that Crowley sets out. It's very common for authors and occult grifters to say that, oh look, Crowley predicted what's happening now, that we've all become childlike. I've even seen people say things like, or a certain person say things like, every man and every woman is a star. Oh look, that's come true. Now everyone has social media. Everyone's got their phones, and now everyone really is a star. Communism, fascism, liberalism, or neoliberalism, let's put it that way, socialism, all the isms. These are often seen as new developments. These are new developments of something coming down the pipeline. And the old stuff is the Christian stuff. However, using what Jung has not taught us, we can see, can't we, that if people are acting like children, then it's not the new God that they serve. It's the old God. It's an old man. They have an old man inside them who's dying. The old man who's dying. This is Christianity, isn't it? It's the God of Christianity. It's an old man in a cloud. Anyway, he's dying. And as Christianity falls apart, as the end of that aeon approaches, we would expect to see, wouldn't we, those people that still behave as if we were in the old aeon, they're going to act increasingly childlike. Increasingly childlike. It should be obvious, shouldn't it, that I'm going to try and stay as focused as possible now, because this could go off in all kinds of directions. I mentioned all of those political systems. They're all... This is hardly an original insight, but it's very obvious that the state, government, right, is surrogate parent. It's a surrogate parent. And increasingly, you see... I say increasingly, I think it's just full-blown now, isn't it? Everyone just wants the state to take care of everything. So whether it's a communism, socialism, neoliberalism, fascism, national socialism, all the isms, there's this idea of, why won't somebody do something? Someone should do something. Someone needs to take care of everything. Those systems you would expect to appear at the end of the Christian era, precisely because they are the later decaying developments of what came before. People knew what to do before in the Christian aeon, precisely because they had an old man inside, like a parent figure, to tell them how to behave. That's the shared Christian morality that Jung mentions in the Red Book as being a system that, although it holds people together, it necessitates a solitude, so you can avoid those contacts you don't wish to have. And that makes people poisoned and poisonous. That's the term he uses, isn't it? So, okay. What does that mean? It means if we look around, now there are confounding factors. So it's obvious, isn't it, that things like social media, right, are accelerating this process. So, but leaving those things aside, we look around us, and what do we see? What do we see? We see people behaving like children. We have okay, let's look at this. Let's look at the last year, 2020. And then what's just happened. You could say it's the combination of 2020, really, couldn't you? What's just happened? But we had in the US, I mean, it spread everywhere, because now everywhere is contaminated. We're all Americans now. What is America? America is the tail end of the Christian, you could say the Christian empire if you like, but it's the tail end. It's the culmination. So as it's falling apart, I mean, it's synonymous with the ending of this Christian age. There was this playing out of the Christian drama in a very particular way, but basically there was rioting and looting and things set on fire, and no one took responsibility for anything. No one would take responsibility for anything. And so bear with me now. I'm going to try and piece this together so you can see, right? The tantrums and I'm going to say tantrums, the tantrums divorced from reality, right? Based on simplistic childish fantasies, let's put it that way, of unfairness. Stay with me, people. Stay with me. Right? It had consequences, undesirable consequences, even for the people carrying out those actions. So what they did was that there was then this story that went around, which was the people rioting were infiltrated by the enemy, right? So like, I don't know, white supremacists or whatever, infiltrated the riots, the peaceful protests, and made them into riots, right? And that's how you can then justify the cost of the playing out of that drama, right? Now, we could get a little bit more sophisticated and say it's actually true. White supremacists did infiltrate it, but really what that is, that's actually seeing the real face of the role that those white liberals were playing whilst they were rioting. If that makes sense to people. But they can't see it as themselves, obviously. So anyway, so there you go. They right. Okay. And it's like, do you really believe that? Do you really believe that? Now, here's something interesting. All of this happened. 5 months of people. People died, destruction of property, all kinds of right stuff, and no one did anything about it. No one did anything about it. All the while it being maintained that America is a fascist state. But if it was a fascist state, how is it possible for the tantrums to continue? It's as if the state didn't really know what to do. A bit like if you had a toddler, right, having a tantrum and saying things aren't fair. The parent, who is themselves just a grown-up child, doesn't really parent because it doesn't really know what to do. This is basically the Western middle class, right? So bear with me, people. Bear with me if you if this straight talk is too straight. So right, so that happened, right? Then we'll flip it round, right? We'll flip it round. So then, like, oh God. So I don't know how many people watched the live streams of what happened in the Capitol building. I'm trying to keep this focus because there's so many details that you could bring in with all of this stuff. Right. So these people who are into following the rules, let's put it that way, they're all into following the rules. So they're like, we follow the rules. They wear the masks, although they didn't wear the masks, did they? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm getting bogged down in details. They watch these riots and they say, this is really unfair. No one's doing anything. And we're following the rules. We're behaving really well. This isn't fair. Why won't someone do? We're not going to stoop to that level. We would never do that. Then the giant orange baby who's in charge. Do you know what? He said he was going to lead them himself to the Capitol building. And then he went and hid probably in a bunker and just watched them. He just led them into they're all going to be arrested, all these people. Anyway, they then break into this building. Now, I don't know if people watched the live stream. It was so bizarre. Someone like pushed past the policeman and then they were like, "Oh, I'm really sorry. Blue lives matter," right? Apologizing as they're storming as they storm the building. How did they storm the building? Anyway, they pretty much, it's like the state doesn't really know what to do, so it kind of just lets them do it, right? So then they get in. They just got through a door and they got in. And what did they do once they were in there? They were all shouting like, "No vandalism! Don't do any vandalism!" And what do they look like? I don't know if people have ever been in a foreign country traveling somewhere and you see American tourists. It's a stereotype. It's a caricature. You know, overweight, shorts, sandals, usually with socks, and camera on a thing. Like I couldn't believe it when I saw that they matched the stereotype in real life. Right. That's what they look like in this Capitol building. taking pictures like they're tourists. That's what they did when they got in there. What were they doing in there? No idea. No idea. It was like the childish version of a coup. Like, it's just too surreal. Anyway, right. Now, what's the explanation for why that happened that's going around now? They were infiltrated by the enemy. That's who infiltrated it and then broke into the Capitol building. Antifa, dressed up like Trump supporters. Anyway, now, so this is all surreal, and this is all. It's like, why didn't the state do anything? How did they let these people? They weren't even. None of them were really armed. I actually saw a picture of someone. I kid you not. Right, a picture of coming in through the doors as part of the people storming the Capitol building was a quadriplegic in a motorized wheelchair. Just came in and was driving around wearing a Trump hat. Stormed, so they stormed it. It's like no one knew what to do. It's like, what do you do with that? Right. Again, like if this is well, we can flip it around. If really what's happening is that communists are stealing the election, why didn't they just shoot them all? One person, well, I think 4 people died, but one person was shot. This was a woman who, for some reason, was trying to climb in through a window and got shot. You could say it was incompetence, like most of these things, just incompetence. But anyway, and then I saw a tweet. I hope this is remaining coherent. Then I saw this tweet which said it was a rapper, Ice T, Ice Cube, Ice Pick, whatever. I mean, it's just another example of what I'm talking about. Anyway, this guy was like, "Oh, just imagine if these were black people instead of white people." Just saying, implying as if black people tried to do it, it would be they'd all be shot or whatever, or you know. And so again, the flip side. What have these MAGA types been saying for a long time? Like, if a white person was doing all this, the police would do something, right? But it reminded me, like he said this, and it's just the only thing you can say is that it's unfair. This is unfair. Like this, like you've got 2 toddlers and a parent who doesn't know how to parent, so just caves in, doesn't do anything, doesn't know what they're doing. Giant baby, trying to parent the kids, and whatever happens, it's just unfair. The children just find it unfair and they have tantrums. Everyone's there. It's just the view that they have of the world is, you could say that it's childish and simplistic, but there is literally no room for appreciating the details that don't align with that childish view of the world. Something that children aren't capable. Well, actually, I've got a 7-year-old who can do that. My 4-year-old, borderline, but it's nothing nothing will get them to let go of the sense that it's unfair. This is unfair. Is this making sense to everyone? Have I lost everyone? What I was trying to do in very, very broad strokes in a very simplistic way with my whiskey hangover was to show 2 sides of a drama that's exactly the same. Where making lots of sense. Good. Right. Now, I won't labor on that too much then. Now, well, here's the thing. What do both of those sides want? What do both of those sides want? What I was talking about before. Someone to do something, a parent to do something, the state to do something. The adults have left the room. There aren't any adults, are there, involved? Bizarrely, right? This isn't the end, though. This isn't the end. I'm praying that I think it's the end of Trump. I don't know how. This is one of those moments like when Trump was elected. When Trump was elected, it was the end of a particular cultural drama that had been going on. There are many, many cultural dramas, but one ended when Trump got in. And there's an opportunity whenever that happens, because there's the possibility of a new kind of there's a new kind of freedom with the possibility of certain fruits that wouldn't be possible otherwise, right? So Trump was anti-establishment, so there was a possibility when he came in. There was a certain tension dissipated in the world. Now it was replaced with something else. Now what's just happened is something like the end of this particular Trump drama, if you could put it that way. There's an opportunity. So what could have ended with when Trump was elected, let's put it that way, some people it never went away for them. They made a different choice, right? The same will happen now. So there will be some people who've just seen what's happened, and they can fully see for the very first time, at least as far as I can see, this is the first time I've ever seen this, where there's no ambiguity about what Trump is doing. No ambiguity whatsoever. He was literally, it's like he crashed a wave of Trump supporters against the center of power in America whilst hiding in his bunker. He led them there. It was symbolically a coup. In reality, it was pathetic. It was if you're going to storm a building like that, you better make sure you do it properly. Like, I don't even think they knew what they were doing. Right. So some of those people, I think the wheels are already in motion for some of these people to be arrested and to go to prison. I don't think they knew that's what the outcome would be for a lot of them. But that's what he just did, and there's no ambiguity there. He lost. You could say he did it on purpose, but he's just totally lost control on what's going to happen now. Maybe he'll be impeached. Maybe he'll be arrested. Maybe he'll be. Zach said they were the dog that caught the car. Exactly. That's true. I think that's also true, about the riots. I don't think. What do you do once you've got the trainers and the sneakers and the new TV, and you've been looting and you've set fire to things and you've really shown Starbucks who's boss? Like what now? Like what? I mean, the difference would be that whole thing was the establishment. They co-opted that. It's pretty much a color revolution. But yeah, they're the dog that caught the car. And anyway, so he's thrown all of those people under the bus. That's what Trump did. And I don't even think his messaging became incoherent for the first time. Now, I'm meaning that in a very particular way. Like, ambiguous messages can be read in ways that you want to read them. And in some ways, Trump's like that because he's the embodiment of chaos. You do know there are people who on 4chan who used magic, meme magic particularly, but magic, to conjure a chaos god as in human form, and then Trump came along, and that's what they wanted to do. They wanted just to put a chaos, the embodiment of a chaos god in the White House to see what would happen. This is, and it's happened, hasn't it? Like, anyway, this is so you can read whatever you want in Trump. If you want to decide that he's I don't know, literally Hitler, then you can do that. And obviously the mainstream media spent a lot of time doing that. Most of the time you could read him as center left on most things, maybe center right. Whatever. Anyway, but this was the first time where the messaging was, we think the extremes, that might be a better way of putting it. The opposites came together. The extremes came together. So that last message that he sent on Twitter that said, before his account was suspended, I think, he said, the sacred landslide victory has been stolen. Communists have stolen democracy and stolen the election. Also, you should just go home in love and peace. I mean, what does that even? That's too much. So anyway, I think that there's a lot of people that would have seen that, who for them it's like popping out of a dream. It's like, what have I been doing for 4 years or last 2 years or whatever it was. But there are some people who are not. It's going to get weirder. They're going to get weirder. The QAnon stuff, there'll be next level stuff with that. I've heard some people say that they think that was a psyop. You know, that it was used, that it was cultivated to control a group of people, and you can activate them, can't you, at certain times? It seems like that's what may have happened. Anyway, that's just that's a theory that I heard. But anyway, there will be people who will just. It's not just like, oh, that's now over, and everyone just goes home. Some people, so there's a chance that something else could happen next. There's some kind of freedom there, but there's also another choice. I think most people will take the other choice. The other side of the drama will match this side of the drama. So that's gonna get crazier. Everything's gonna get crazier. So if you remember, I talked about foam during one of these talks. I was using a colorful image for understanding where we might be at. It's like foam, like we're all in our own little bubble. These bubbles, they're like the worldview of a toddler having a tantrum. In that you don't even want to hear the other side of the story. It's like you're either with it or you're not, and that's it. There's just no. I don't even want to. It's not like a debate, or it's not even like taking positions in a debate. It's literally you're either with us or you're not, and that's it. Again, the view of like an angry toddler who just there's no capacity for self-reflection. Anyway, so these bubbles, we're in these little bubbles, and I use the idea of foam as in it's like the foam or the froth coming out of the corpse of liberalism. A colorful image, like I said, but we've come to there used to be this idea of the mass or the mass man or the mass person, which was everyone more or less, everyone doing the same thing, believing the same stuff, even where there was two parties politically, everyone still believed the same stuff. They perhaps just had different opinions about how you go about things. Let's put it that way. That's gone. Like there is no mass man, the concept of that anymore. Now it's people in bubbles where, and again, you can see that it's a bubble as in, I don't know. Let's say you're on the right. It's like anything in the Guardian newspaper is just a lie. It's just all lies. So I don't go near it. Or, it's the other way around. It's like Fox News. Anything on Fox News is a total lie. So I just not even going near it. Wouldn't even listen to a thing they said because it has to be total lies. So people are in their bubbles, and what are they looking at? They think that their Facebook pages or their Twitter feeds or whatever it is that they're on is where they'll get the truth from. And the truth that they're getting is simply what feeds into the bubble that they're already in. So expect more lunacy. Expect more lunacy. How do you travel through this? You know what? It's fine if you're in a bubble. It's to some extent, everyone's in a bubble, and you're not going to get. You can't. Me myself, like I will not. I don't look at mainstream media. I can't be doing with it. Like it's too. It's almost like I have an allergic reaction to it, especially if I see it on the TV. I can't believe that people I've had such a break from it that I can't believe people will watch television that has adverts. I don't know how people can stand adverts. However, the way that you travel through this is that you do not lose contact with reality. Part of that is recognizing, oh, right now I'm in a bubble, or right now this extraordinary visceral reaction that I'm having to some details that don't seem to fit what my Facebook feed is telling me. You could notice that, and that's fine. And then it's like, what is it? What are those details? Or it's that it comes back to the teaching. It's be willing to see, look just to see. Even if you have an extraordinary rage, just look just to see. You can do that. And that's the difference. Some people aren't looking just to see at all. Like the and an attempt to appreciate in the lame way that I just did when I was talking about what's just happened over the last year, culminating in what's just happened yesterday. Recognizing the same structure, seeing the same structure, and what's important about that is not everyone's as bad as each other, or everyone's as mad as each other. It's you can appreciate that everyone's asleep, and you can notice the same behaviors in yourself, and that's the important thing. It's always turning it back round to yourself. So not being concerned with others. I mean, that's a dead giveaway that you're not just in a bubble, but actually if you're just in a drama, is when you see another and you're angry with them, or resentful, or envious, or filled with rage or hate. Either way, in that moment, structurally, it's you're wishing that they would choose to behave in a different way, or rather, you want to make a choice for them. They've made the wrong choice. You wish you could make the choice for them. You wish them to be other than they are. You wish for them to you don't give them the dignity of recognizing that they're also a star. That's what it means to make a choice for someone else. First of all, it's not possible. It's literally impossible. You can't even do it with a child as an adult. You can't take the choice away from them. It's not a possible thing. But when we're angry with people, that's exactly what we're attempting to do in that movement. That's exactly what we're trying to do in that movement. And it's undignified. We rob them of dignity, but what might be harder to see is that you're actually denying yourself your own choice in that moment, because you're not concerning yourself with it anymore. It's as if you have no choice. You have to be subject to the injustice of this person and their choices, and you want them to be other than they are, meaning you want to take their choice away from them. Does that make sense to people? But that's the basic structure of the drama, and it's why it's the denial of what your nature actually is whenever you do that. And then in addition to that, if you can see the structure and understand it, then you can at least make sense of what you're seeing. That might include a surreal nature to it. Recognizing that there's such a thing as chaos, and that people now, it seems to be a matter of people believing whatever it is that they decide they're going to believe, and that's more important than anything else. And that, you could say, that's the definition of a bubble. So don't lose contact with the reality. Be willing to see, even if that includes seeing that you're in a bubble or you're behaving in a similarly deranged manner. But the problem isn't being in a bubble. The problem is not looking outside of it. Another way of putting that is the problem is not being in a drama, because you'll find yourself in one. It's choosing not to do something about that, to take responsibility for it. So take responsibility to see, but do not try and take someone else's responsibility away from them to see. And that's how you stay sane. So know what you're looking at. Keep the responsibility here. Go your way, as Jung described it. So for the adults in the room, to use that phrase, that would be the discovery of the divine child. Now, over the course of these talks, we've seen the divine child presented in different ways. And one way of understanding where the child comes from, or how it's born, or how it comes out of the egg, or however you want to describe it, it's the initiate traveling into the underworld to meet the goddess. And the initiate becomes a child of the goddess. The process of birthing the divine child is the same as becoming a mature human being, right? So you become a mature human being by birthing the divine child inside. And that means in the transition period of going through, it's like going away from having an old god, an old dying god inside, to be replaced with the divine child, and going from being a child ourselves, regardless of our age, and becoming a mature human being. That is the process of individuation that Jung described. The same thing as saying, do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. It's the fulfillment of that. You can see, can't you, that process of individuation, or of following the law, do what thou wilt, is only going to be for a few. It's only going to be for a few. And it's not because of some, it's not because it's not available to everyone. It's, there are choices in terms of what's cultivated. But it also means as well, doesn't it, that there are very few adults around. But again, you can't try and make people grow up. That's a key feature of the dignity of the divine, that everyone is ultimately a god. Is that you can't attempt to make them grow up. Right, is everyone with me so far? Did that all make sense? I'll just have a look in the comments to make sure I've not missed anything. Alex says old god equals shadows, etc. Child god equals pure. You could actually use the same symbolism, yeah, for understanding what it means to travel through a drama. For sure, yeah. Alex, I mean, shadows accumulated during life versus the divine child, which is free of those and is just light. Yeah. Charlie, contrast with unless become like little children, not enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, that would be the contrast, wouldn't it? Unless you become like the divine child, then you're not getting into heaven. Carson, Chuck Schumer alluded to it being similar to Pearl Harbor. Yes. See, this is the way it's so surreal. It's like, yeah, symbolically it is. Like, they did they did that, and that's crazy. But the nature of it was just so. Again, it's like a conjunction of opposites, isn't it? Dom, what you're commenting on reminds me of what happened in Seattle during protests. The mayor called the chaos the Summer of Love. Oh, you can't make it up. And the governor initially feigned ignorance of the protests. Yeah. And Minneapolis is an extraordinary place, as Zach could tell you. Similar craziness. Dom, in terms of being an ineffectual parent, yeah. And there's also, in it being an ineffectual parent, you could say it's an inability to see what the truth might be. but it's actually married with an unwillingness to see. And that's that quality I was trying to get at with how toddlers are, like unwilling to even see, which is something that you develop over time, isn't it? As you get older, as you leave the age of 4 or 5. Oh, now there is also, I mean, there's so much more stuff to say about what we could look at and what we, what's obvious, that what we can see, like the superhero movies, all the fantasy stuff, all the escapism and the nostalgia. Who's the nostalgia for? It's not for kids. I mean, it's for the large kids, isn't it? That's what nostalgia is, because children aren't old enough yet to be nostalgic. And what are they? They're like these superheroes who are competent, who will take care of things for everyone. Oh, this is horrible. I really don't like it. Will you take care of it for me? Can you? Oh, thank God, someone's taking care of it for me, so I can just fall asleep in my bubble with my fantasies. Agree about mainstream media and adverts. Indeed, Dave. It's just, I just can't. I feel like I'm being psychically assaulted with like a bullshit spray. And I think even if because you do that thing, don't you, where you can just like, oh, I'm not really watching this, but I think it has an effect on you, even if you're not really paying attention. Carson, yeah, what I needed to hear. Groovy. Matt, yeah, Carson. Exasperation has been a pretty recurrent theme of mine this last year. My own fault, haha. It's difficult though. Again, right? So one thing that's a point that's labored in the teaching is that you will not get rid of shadows, nor your capacity to make a case of mistaken identity, right? So the teaching isn't never find yourself lost in a delusion. It's rather recognize when you're in one and know how to travel through it. And by doing so, give birth to the child, the divine child, right? So we can say it's similar. When you see all this, when you see things happening that you can't believe that you're seeing, or that you find unjust, or whatever it might be, don't try to. You're not going to. You could say that particular version of dramas now, facilitated by the machine, by the algorithm, is a feature of the spirit of the times. We could say that. Now, as you know from Jung, you cannot escape the spirit of the times. You're going to have both, like the spirit of the times and the spirit of the depths. Or another way of putting it, you're going to have the darkness and you're going to have the light, and you're not going to get away from them, right? So you're not supposed to try. It's just recognize when you are doing that, and what it is, and appreciate your unwillingness to even get out of your bubble and see the other side. Appreciate it, and then move from there. Carson, Alan Moore spoke about the superhero problem in his most recent interview. Dave hooked it up. Yeah, I had a I had a look at that Alan Moore interview. He's that dude is a cranky old man. Alex, always being born when you travel through the darkness. One child being born multiple times. Well, darkness. Where do you find darkness? In the nighttime, in a cave, or a house, or a womb, or inside an egg. Not that I've ever been inside an egg. But these are all, you see, these are all tied together. Contraction. We even use the word contraction. And it all ties up, doesn't it? The symbolism of the fruit, producing a fruit, giving birth to a child, and so on. Planting seeds, the darkness of the soil, you know. Now, if you really want your mind blown, you could actually think about how how roles are planted, and it's when you're a child. And you could look at the structure of how these things relate to each other, what the process is that you're doing, when these seeds are planted, at that age, when you're a child, and it's only possible really then when you're a child. What it means to get older and develop, and therefore what's put it another way. If you could draw all of this out, and you could get quite sophisticated to appreciate the structure of what's going on. But it's obvious, isn't it, that when you do these practices, you're looking at something that was planted when you were a child, right? And it's like recovering that child as you go through the drama, and that makes you a developed human being. So as you're getting older, you're producing the divine child within. You could then even see, couldn't you, that the structure of the dramas, the false transmissions, come from an adult. They come from an adult. So it's the view of a childlike adult, which is what is planted with the false transmission. That's what you deal with when traveling through the drama. So you're going from the dead God, you could put it that way, the dead old dying God, and giving birth to the child. And then you can go further with that to see something very profound about the nature of time, why time is the way that it is, why there's such a thing as the past and the future. But I won't go into that now. Right, so where are we at? We're at 1 hour 7 minutes. Did I cover what I wanted to cover? I think I did. And as long as everyone can see that the what looks like a new age is actually belongs to the old age that's dying, and that what's new is hardly been born. An individuation is not the same thing as being an individualist. Individualism is itself a form of childishness, isn't it? Well, and what do I mean by that? I mean, if you're going to be ungenerous, and I'm going to be, individualism basically means being left alone to consume. You leave me alone, I'll leave you alone, and we'll just consume. It's like a parody of individuation, you could put it that way. And what do we have? A generation of giant babies. Sometimes, right, I go to the school to pick up my kids or drop them off or whatever, and I see some of the other parents in the playground waiting to pick up their kids. And like, this guy was, I heard there's these are dads, they're older than me, like they're in their 40s or maybe even like almost approaching 50. They dress like they're 19. And God, I'm so bitchy. I just like hear them saying things like, "Oh yeah, what did you do today? Oh, it was great. I watched the recent episode of The Mandalorian." It's a grown man with children watching it on his own, like not with the kids. Anyway, sorry, I'm sorry. being bitchy. Anyway, good show though. I watch it with my kids. Right. Alex, individualism sounds like returning to the womb when you put it like that. Yeah, and it that movement of modernism, the modern individual, is a movement towards isolation, a movement towards like being in a bubble. It's moving in that way, isn't it? And that's exactly what the algorithm's doing. And when I say the algorithm, I mean I'm using that as a catch-all term for what we do with our devices, what our devices are doing to us. Now, what's interesting, so I don't want to just we talked about, didn't we? You get a shadow, drama, darkness, contraction, you travel through it, and what pops out the other end? Divine child. We are going further into darkness, you could put it that way, right? Or a particular kind of darkness, let's put it that way, right? So we're all now in this foam, right? These are our own little bubbles, more isolated than ever before. Lockdowns. I mean, we're not going to know how to socialize. Like, it's already weird. If you must, maybe you've had this experience. If you watch something that involves people before the lockdowns began, and there's an immediate response, which is a feeling of people have stood way too close. You don't have to think it. It's just there's a feeling like, whoa. It's almost like everyone stood right next to each other. It's like, did we really used to stand that close to each other? What? What's that? Right. So, yeah, where are the masks? So, I mean, the masks. I've been through this symbolism before, haven't I? Like the masks, literal bubbles. People wear literal bubbles on their heads. The lockdowns are going to be ongoing. They're not ending anytime soon, right? They're going to be ongoing with the vaccine, without the whatever. It's ongoing. Nations are splitting up, falling apart. It's all part of the same process. All becoming atomized, right? But it's a darkness, isn't it? There's a drama. It's detrimental, right? But what does that look like? It's something falling apart. If individualism is it's like a parody, right, of individuation, right? Then it's like a shadow of something that we're approaching, isn't it? Or what happens if you just keep going smaller and smaller and your bubble shrinks, gets smaller and smaller? Where do we end up? Or what's the possibility at the end? What's the possibility? The possibility is you end up with the new age, the age of the divine child. Certainly the end of the Christian era. Even now, like you can no doubt there'll be some form of Christian revival, right? But and that's kind of happening, right? But we can only conceive of that, can't we, as an individual choice? There will never be a time when having a Christian theocracy will make sense in Europe. I'm not saying anything about the States because probably the States, but it's now right now it's an individual choice. It's an individual choice. It can only be conceived in those terms. So things keep getting smaller and smaller. Bubbles they shrink, less and less people in it, and what you're going to end up with or the possibility is that you can end up with the genuine expression of a unique nature. So there's possibilities. Hang on, what's this phrase? Think about that, though. I want you to try and appreciate this. It's almost like there's an appalling freedom in the future that's possible. I just want to find that phrase that I said earlier. Oh, this giant book. May each go his own way. I will be no saviour, no lawgiver, no master teacher unto you. You are no longer little children. I mean, think about if a parent said that to you. You know, like you're asking something or you're saying something to them, and they say you're no longer a little child. What follows after that? It's like you take responsibility. You choose. You choose. Giving laws, wanting improvements, making things easier has all become wrong and evil. May each one seek out his own way. The way leads to mutual love in community. Mutual love in community. Men will come to see and feel the similarity and commonality of their ways. Laws and teachings held in common compel people to solitude. Well, we've been through that. I mean, that's basically a description of ending up in a bubble, isn't it? Do you not know that you yourselves are the fertile acre which bears everything that avails you? Think about that. There isn't anyone that's going to help you, nor do you need anyone to help you, nor is everything going to be given to you. It comes from you. You have everything. It's just going to come from you. That is an extraordinary possibility, isn't it? And I used the term appalling freedom before, but it was... Think about that. That no one's... That's the possibility of what's coming. So all of the stuff, all of the stuff that we talk about in terms of the cultural darkness, because ultimately all of this is darkness because it's existential, isn't it? But forget that level of it. At the level of the culture, the darkness, these things becoming in these bubbles, the craziness, the madness, the loss of reality, where things are going, the falling apart of things, no one taking responsibility for any of it. There's all of that, but that's not the future. Like we can say, oh, that's coming, this is what you can expect, but it's not the future. That's not the future. That's the past. That's the past. What lies in front of us in the immediate future is the past, and it's dying. So what comes out of that? We're being told what's coming out of it. And it demands that it demands you growing up. That's what it asks of you, to grow up. That's what does that even look like? Do you know what that looks like? I don't even know what that looks like. I can't imagine what a community looks like. Or when I say a community, like a society, or what does it even look like? I can't even imagine it. Owen, man, I've just been ordered out like a dog to clap for a fucking photo op. Oh, you're not doing that clapping. Oh, It's not the clapping for the. They've started that again, haven't they? Carson. So the bubbles are giving a chance for the new age to express itself. Well, it looks like there's a possibility there, Dave. So there'll be the few adults in the room, and the vast majority who want harsh rules. Who want the old man? That is for sure. For sure. Think it's not. Think of the choices that are presented to people and what they opt for. What they opt for. Like when I'll give you an example. When the coronavirus started and we went into lockdown, it's like we caught a glimpse of something, didn't we, that we hadn't seen for a long time. Like what it would be like to be together with the people that we love, with nothing to do, like how people used to live. Communities coming together to help each other. Do you remember that? People doing the shopping for each other, and all of that. There was a glimpse of something. And what do we choose instead? I say we, I mean the majority of people. Follow the rules. Someone's in charge. Take care of it for us. Can we just get back to doing what I was doing before? I just want to return to normalcy. Normalcy. Remember what normalcy was? That's not coming back, that particular kind of normalcy, but people want it, don't they? They want to just go back to the atomized modern individual consumer. That's what they want to go back to. Working, busy all the time, busy. Not really seeing each other. Not spending the time, Never being bored. Boredness is not, being bored is underrated. I actually tried to make myself bored on a Sunday. And what I mean by that is we have nothing to do. And it's amazing what you end up doing. Anyway, yeah, we made choices, and then it's all the state again, isn't it? What is the state going to do? What are they going to do? Won't they just fix it for us? Can you just sort it out? And then we have the I mean, in this country, what we have is anarcho-tyranny, don't we? Because we're technocrats, but run by technocrats. So there are choices there. Now, you don't have to be you don't need any book learning. You don't need any spiritual insights or anything to make a choice in terms of what you'd rather pursue. Now, I imagine that some people did make a different choice. Maybe they're like, yeah, I'm going to grow veg, and actually, I'm going to make sure that I try and work from home actually and stay at home, or even just give it my job if you can. Like, I don't know, stay with the kids or whatever. Or like maybe Granny should never be in a care home. Maybe she shouldn't have been in there in the first place. She's going to come and stay with us now after this. Something like that, I'm sure there'll be some people that did that. But for most people, no. So that was a choice. And you don't have to, like I was saying, there's no qualification for having the choice being made available. So there's another choice now with the Trump thing that's just ended. But I see people making a different choice. So here's one choice that will happen: revenge on literally the people. Revenge on Trump supporters, anyone who supported Trump. I mean, that's just got to go into overdrive. There could be a different choice that's made. But anyway, yes. So a freedom. There is a yes. We are for. There's a, on the whole, collectively falling asleep in a very particular way, facilitated by technology, into these bubbles. There'll be increasing hysterical, insane events that will keep persisting for the foreseeable. Your place in that is no different from what it would have been if none of this crazy shit was going on. It's the teaching. But it means that what you're seeing is not the future. This is not the new age. Like this crap is the decomposing remnants of an old dead god. But the hysterical shrieking for someone to do something. Want someone to take responsibility. Dad, won't you just do it? You don't just do it for me. And then the classic, I mean, it's like everyone's screaming for the state to do something, won't someone do something, and then being resentful for the fact that they'll do something or that they are doing something. It's classic. Anyway, that the future, what does it even look like? Now, we're a part of that future, the unfolding of that future now. And I think that that's an extremely liberating and I use that word appalling because I wanted to highlight the degree of the freedom or the lack of definition of what that is or what it looks like. But that's there's the future. It's like here's all you're surrounded by all of this shit at the moment. Maybe it's going to get really stinky, but that's what we're traveling through. Oh, one other thing. I'm just going to throw this in there because I think this is important. You often as well hear this idea that the future humans are going to be androgynous or hermaphrodites, or there'll be no more men and women. We'll just be, I don't know, whatever. That is the child, isn't it? That's being a child, and that's part of the old aeon. Literally, children are they're like androgynous, aren't they? Like there's a lack of defined. You could say there's a lack of defined gender in a certain way, but that just means it's just not developed yet. If this is making sense, but people think that's where we're going, but that's not where we're going. That's the end of Christianity. As bizarre as that sounds, the human form is divine. It's a divine image. It's the divine human being. Now, that does not mean that there aren't individual natures to be expressed in terms of how they are, right? But that's not the same thing as identity politics, as individualism or as consumerism, because that's the understanding of people's natures is presented in exactly that way at the moment. So I hope I articulated that clearly. There are things that don't change, and one of the things that doesn't change is that human beings are at the center of the cosmology, the human form. It's the men and women of alabaster, and the nature of words, what it means to speak. It's why Peter Kingsley talks about in Catafalque. He talks about he doesn't spell this out, but he talks about how there's something about talking to a machine that isn't the person, and there are some rules that you can't break. And but if you were to spell that out, you make yourself inhuman by doing that. You submit yourself to you submit something quintessentially human to that which is inhuman. You can already see that already happening with technology. We adjust ourselves to it, to accommodate it, and then swallow propaganda to make that what's the word? To adapt ourselves to it so that it's you can accommodate it. That's what it is. So you'll go along with it, with the system. But it's a decline. It's a reciprocal contraction into a loss of humanity. That's what that is. So the future is human. There will be human beings, right? There will be human beings, and it's free. It's free of the identity politics. It's free of any idea of social justice at the moment. It's free of any kind of politics or political system devised in the 20th century. It's free of all of those things. This is why I was going back to the appalling freedom side of it. All of these things are it's an old god dying internally, so that externally people become childish. I just wanted to mention that because I really want to try and drive this home about what the future looks like. I don't know what it looks like. All right. So did all of that make sense? Does everyone get what I'm saying? Has everyone left? I do apologize if I've been incoherent and so on with this whiskey hangover. I felt like normally I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't drink if I'm good, or have a hangover before I do a talk like this. But it was a special event, so yes, it's great. Oh, nice. Yes, it's great stuff. I think so. Okay, all right. I will now move then to, if you want to put. Oh, so is the wanting to stay at home with family, shrinking environment, etc., considered childish? No, not if not in and of itself. No, childish is taking responsibility for nothing, which is childish is wanting to get away. wanting to be look, it's very obvious, and it's really obvious, when you're a parent in this situation, is that we outsource parenting. Like, we outsource it. It's like, we're going to send them off to a state institution called a school. Send them off and whatever. Now, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm not saying anything about it. I'm just saying that, like, that's what that is. Carson, Dom just popped a question in the Discord. Okay, I'll check it out now. What you're saying about the Star Chrono? Oh God, okay. So how can you spot it is the attitude regarding responsibility? You look. I mean, isn't it obvious? I find it really obvious to spot when it's like, you know what? I just want to be left alone so I can watch my Marvel movies. I know what might be happening now. This might not be happening, Alex. So I'm not accusing you of it, but I know what might be happening now. This might be the case that based on what I've said, it's like, so what do I do? Like, to take a strategy out of it. And that's a thing that can happen whenever the teaching is described. But actually, if you just do the practices, you don't have to worry about any of this. You just don't have to worry about it. Like, it's natural, isn't it? To, like, if you love your family, that you care for them. I'm not saying, everyone, right? Well, being an adult means that everyone lives together as a happy family in a house. Most families aren't happy. A lot of people, there's at least one person in a family that they're just insufferable. How can you be around them? There are families where they're so dysfunctional God damn it, think about the number of. It's almost like, is there going to be a generation of people with just horrible transmissions as a result of being locked up with abusive parents, or like the situation exacerbating those? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's gone through the roof. So I'm not saying anything as simple-minded as like we're all look, we're all together and we're happy. What I'm saying is that there was a glimpse of something. There's a glimpse of something that matters, that's real and human. Could put it that way. And so that can take many different forms. But yeah. But you don't need to worry about the one way to understand the unfolding of your path in Jung speak, or the unfolding of your true will, right, is that it's the natural expression of your nature. You don't have to guess. There's no guessing going on. If you're doing the practice and you're going through the shadow and you're traveling through the darkness, through the shadows, then it's simply a question of like seeing where you sabotage that, or rather seeing where shadows cost you that. And so the end result, the divine child doesn't need instructions or a strategy. Its nature is just its nature. So yeah. Dave, so we grow up when we internalize the control of the previous aeon. Internalized. I don't know if I'm getting this wrong, Dave, because I always feel like with these chats sometimes I can easily get the. I don't know if I misread or misunderstand what someone's saying and then go off on a tangent. So stop me if I am. But I don't know if I'd use the term internalized, because that's kind of like the old man is internalized in the previous aeon, and so we're children. Once we travel through that, so I don't know if by the internalized you meant something like integrated, or I don't know, something like that. But again, tell me if I'm misreading, if I'm misunderstanding. It's like freeing ourselves from that we give birth to the divine child inside. And that's how we grow up. So the divine child means we've grown up. The grown up inside, or the old man, the dying old man, means that we're infantilized on the outside. Oh yes. So then yes. I'm with you, Dave. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. It's like, so another way of putting that would be like when you recover the child that you lost in the past, that's when you've grown up. Matt, so individuation is becoming an adult. Yes, but but not biologically. You can be a biological adult, but still a big baby. Alex, thanks for clarifying. Okay, I wasn't stressed, I just wanted to make sure. Yep, groovy. Cheers. Yeah. Okay, doke. Now, question in the Discord. I mean, speaking of that, Dave, actually, I was thinking last time you asked me a question about why doesn't Jung, I think he said something like, why doesn't he talk about non-duality outside of the Christ myth? And I started talking about individuation. But I did wonder, like, did you mean at the time, why doesn't he use that language or like talk about the Eastern traditions? One of the things with Jung is at the time that he was, there were very bad translations and very sparse translations from Eastern traditions back in the day. They didn't exist like they do now. And Jung had a very bad translation of the Golden Flower, and he wrote an intro to that. But basically, it's like that. The language that we have now, like talking about non-duality and the Eastern language, just didn't exist. So he didn't have that language. So it's but of course he did have the language of the Western tradition. So he speaks in that language. Yeah. So if you talk, yeah. So yes, it was language. Yeah. So but hopefully you can see that for talking about these things, and you can see how it's different from the language that we've imported from the East in the interim, like in the gap in between Jung and Crowley and such for now. But yeah, That's basically why he never uses that term. Right, questions in the Discord. Here we go. Alex, Rosarium Philosophorum. I meant this thing. Jung wrote about it in his The Psychology of the Transference. 16th century alchemical treatise with a series of 20 woodcuts. I mean, this is the first time looking at it, so I still have no comments about that, but I'll have a look, and then I don't know. Was there something specific you wanted to talk about, Alex, with that? Or you wanted my take on? Owen, I meant to ask these the other day. Does Jung mention 40 days as part of the process? Why the 40 days specifically? I would say read. I mean, the 40 days and the 40 nights is a thing. I would say I haven't read everything Jung's written, so I'm going to guess that it'll be in there. But there are a number of different authors give different reasons why 40 days. Can you say some stuff about Chokmah and Binah and how they fit in with the Magia stages? On the Binah bit, I've got the impression it relates to the divine feminine, but the golden dawn attributed to Saturn. This is true. Now the problem so when it comes to symbolism, of course, people can ask me questions about symbolism, and I'll give whatever. But it's honestly just better just to research it. As for lining up the stages, I'm loath to do that because, on the one hand, there are similarities. On the other hand, there are differences. And I'm as guilty as anyone, especially with my earlier stuff, of looking for the similarities to see that, they're talking about the same process, right? But there are differences. So crossing the abyss is just not the same thing as a dark night of the soul, which is itself not the same thing as the Dukkha in Theravada Buddhism. There are similarities. Sometimes they overlap, but there are specific things that are different. You might even argue that crossing the abyss is a specific type of event. And those differences matter in terms of the qualities of the fruit that's produced. Right. Now, the thing about the tree of life is that it can be so general as for it to not mean that much. So what I mean by that is there's what would be added. Let's put it that way. You could have a whole tree in one stage. You could have one part of the tree as one stage. There are trees in trees. You can if you've ever seen Crowley's trees in the Vision of the Voice, and like how he pins them on the tree. There are so your example of Saturn and the divine feminine, they can both go on there, and they both describe an element of the same thing, but the differences are what's important in terms of those symbols, not the similarity. That's why they're there. I don't know if I'm saying this right. Okay, let me put it this way. Rather than me make statements to be believed or approaches to take, let's just think about questions to ask. So, if you have a drama and there's a god in it, and let's say that god is the god Crom, you could ask the question, is Crom the same as Abraxas? Are they the same? Why would Crom be there, not Abraxas, in the drama? Because there's something specific about Crom. Now, you could say there's similarities, but there are differences. Crom belongs to a story called Slain, like Conan the Barbarian. Now you have a whole drama, don't you? That's the theme of which is battle, combat. Abraxas doesn't have that. So it's like if you try and just switch them round or make them the same, you miss the point of it being there in the first place. And the similarity or the understanding of why they're the same is not lost by dealing with the particulars. I'm using that example of Crom because that's an example from one of Owen's dramas. And we had a similar conversation a couple of days ago. Does that make sense to people? Like we can suddenly, it's like, oh, this God is the same as this God from this tradition, this from this tradition, and this from this tradition. And that's how they all line up. And that's how I can make sense of this story over here. But it's like, well, why not just have that God appear in that way in the drama? Why the different face? Because it belongs to a context. And the context is really important for where you are right now because your path is unfolding. That's what we're interested in. Your path unfolding. So you get to participate in what's described by all these different gods. But it's very important that the face the God is presented with is honored because it's presented in that way for a reason. Same with stages, same with descriptions of the process, same with lineages, same with teachings. Does that make sense to everyone? But so it's the question determines why you're looking or how you're looking. Yeah, so my answers are terrible for you there, Owen. Philippa, how do you do cosmological binding? Can't seem to trace the last binding I did back to anything in the past and how it appeared, particularly its song lyrics seem related to perceptions of reality, so I assume it's cosmological, but I don't know how to finish the binding without making assumptions. Yes. Take the drama, take an instance of the drama. What you were doing when it came along, all of that, take an instance of it. Then to the side of it, you're going to make a diagram. 4 stages, like a tree. Put things conditional in the bottom, things unconditional, the second stage. The details of how both are found one in the other from the example at the 3rd stage, and then they all point to the 4th stage, which doesn't need describing. Start with the states. Ask the question, why am I in that state? So if you're angry, why am I in that state? Let's say in the drama, the song lyrics interrupted my practice and made me angry. Right. So, well, that means it's conditional. Why do you feel this way? Because of this. That means it's conditional. Stick it in the bottom. If there's a state in there like bliss, feeling bliss, ask the question, why am I feeling bliss? There is no reason. Bliss is just blissing out on bliss. So you end up with bad language. It means it's unconditional. That goes to the 2nd stage. So you got a lesser and a greater. So you divide it up in that way. And then you're going to find how they're related to each other. So how are they related to each other? Well, the bliss is being experienced by you, isn't it? In a conditionally, in a conditional setting, like the greater is found in the lesser. And then there will be, this is hard to do without an actual example. So I'm trying to keep the example coherent. The content of the song lyrics may be an example of how the great is found in the lesser, but again, I'd have to go with the details. So I appreciate that that's my instructions are might not make that much sense without being able to see it in front of you. So when actually doing a cosmological binding, I assure you it's very simple, but it can show you as well how far you've gone with the particularly if it's a spiritual experience with the realization. And you can actually see how far up the tree it's gone, and why if you only see, say, like the greater in the lesser, but not the lesser in the greater, or vice versa, then you know it's stopped. And you know what and by doing the binding, it precipitates the next stage. But really the best way of learning to do it is in person. I've given up on the idea of, providing materials to teach people how to do binding practice so that they can do it on their own. And I've taken the opposite approach. So to contain the essence in the written instructions, but to understand, you have to learn it in person from a teacher to student, or even student to student. That's possible. Alex, can you say more stuff about why the baby Jesus always is depicted with an old man's face? I forgot what you said about it before. When he's with Mary, I mean. It's because that's the initiate. So it's a grown adult human who's the divine child with the goddess. That's it. Dom, would you appreciate your articulation of anima and animus as described in Ion? Oh, would appreciate your articulation and how to conceive of them within the context of Magia. The way to conceive of them within the context of Magia is that the structure that Jung describes is an accurate structure. It's an accurate structure, but it's like referring to the roles. We would think that then there would then be individual roles that fill in the details for the anima or animus. So does that make sense? So yeah, because his ideas, I don't know if you want me to go into this, but anima and animus, as we develop into adults, the feminine side of the man becomes not repressed in a pathological way, but suppressed in a natural way. But then that can then come out as the pathological shadow of the mother, and then it's vice versa for women. So they have the pathological version of the father that they project onto others. Put it that way, and it does explain a lot about men and women. Army, hi Alan. Hang on, I'll just look in the chat, see if I'm missing anything. Alexander Carson. I knew a couple of Golden Dawn practitioners. They refused to do a certain path working with my group because it went above the bars. They took that tree very seriously. Harmony, hi Alan. Could you expand on the meaning of Titans from Greek mythology? Oh, why is it you have an order of gods that are overthrown by a new order? Do they play the same role as the Nephilim in Christian cosmology? And what is their relationship to Phanes? Maybe the best way of getting into that would be in terms of everything we've just talked about. The Titans. Zeus is the divine born into time, you could put it that way. So I'm obviously not going to do all of this justice right now. But the basic gist of Zeus's birth is time. Time consumes its own children, right? And as a result of not wishing to be overthrown, oh God, I'm butchering this. because there's a prophecy, right? So I'll just say this at this point. Think of it in those terms, what we've talked about, the birth of the divine child. So there's something comes before, doesn't it, before it gets to the divine child? And I mean, there's so I've just mentioned time. That should be obvious. But you can look at who Zeus's mother is, and make a cosmology or a creation myth. Creation myth, you could think of it that way. So Phanes is a creation myth. We, going through this process, reenact the creation myth. That's what recapitulating cosmology is. To repeat the act of creation. Which is why we say, like, creation is literally put in your hands, and you get to decide what to do with it. And going through this process, it's like, we'll do it all again. We'll do it all again and redeem it. Even the worst parts of it. Even they're worth saving. So again, I appreciate that's a rubbish answer. The Nephilim thing, though, is I mean, I suppose you could take it at face value, but it's an older story, isn't it? Where I think I mentioned this in a prior talk, but there's a from the Babylonian side, it's a different story. Lux, when do you think a next retreat could be? Okay, right. So good question, because I've had it in the box to go back to Dolphin's Leap in Greece and do a retreat in May and October. They seem to just really like those. Those are the only 2 weeks they ever offer me. Just want to make that clear to people. Like, I never get a choice. It's just that there are these 2 weeks. However, I don't know if that's going to happen this year, because these lockdowns aren't going. They're not going anywhere. Like, even with the vaccines rolling out, wouldn't surprise me. The lockdown at the beginning of last year ended in, was it July or August? Right into summer. Now, we're definitely going to be in lockdown in this country until April. Will different countries have implemented vaccine passports? Will, what's airlines have gone out of business? It's difficult for me to judge, you see, because I'd say, well, let's all aim for May and we'll all go on retreat in Greece, but will people be able to do it? Will people feel safe traveling? I have no idea. And then who can predict what's going to happen next week? Politically, So I think maybe my wife thinks what I should do is do a retreat in October. Hopefully that might be all right in person. But maybe do something else online again. I'd really like to do something in person. I'm done staring at this thing. It's so inhuman. Like, it's just so lame. Yeah, but not online. Well, I'll make a decision on that and see. And a UK one. I suppose I could try a UK one. Maybe I'll think about that. Yeah. I need to give it some thought. They're quite bullish at the retreat center. They're like, oh no, everything's great. Everything's great here. Grace is great. Everyone, come on over, because they went back there last year and did a couple of things, did a couple of retreats. Yeah, I'm not so sure. Seattle is a lovely place in spring, summer. I bet it is, but like, would I fly to Seattle during lockdown in the middle of riots? Any other comments or questions? Anyone that I've tried to Anyone's questions that I've answered poorly, you want to follow up? Matt, is there a danger that ideal states can be used as an excuse for not dealing with stuff? No, because if you're in an ideal state, you're dealing with stuff. For real. Carson, mere background noise after a time, it becomes part of the scenery. Owen, get a passport, Carson. All right then, people. Well, just give it a sec. Is there going to be a sneaky chat comment or a question? Yeah, I mean, apologies for my poor performance in terms of having a hangover. Like I said, I hope I get an historic pass just because of the the nature of the event. I hope I've armed you with a way of seeing, understanding, getting your bearings and knowing what's going on. I hope you can appreciate that it's only now really that it would make sense to give that orientation with the lineage, as sparse as our examples have been, because we've just dipped our toes in little points in terms of the eternal religion. That with that structure, it makes, you can see a continuity from the past, where we're at now, and where we're going, and how a different future is nevertheless relates to an ancient past. But it's the same structure being repeated. And how Magia sits within that, and where we're at together at this moment in time. And so next time on Sunday, we will look. Yes, we shall look at Grant Morrison. I'll have a little look at the people's homework. We'll have a look at Arkham Asylum. We won't spend that much time on it. And then I might even talk about his comic Nameless. Not that people have to read that, but I'll put it in the reading list. Morrison as an interesting take on the present time. However, we will also be able to see now, won't we? If we've developed a taste, meaning an ability to discern what belongs to the old Aeon and what belongs to the new Aeon, we'll be able to detect that in the writings of various different teachers or individuals, won't we? To help ourselves make sense of what it is that person is saying and where they sit. Oh, by the way, what I've said about the new Aeon is actually there in Crowley. Crowley talks specifically about how all of these things that are childish are actually part of the old Aeon. They're being cleared out of the way. All right then, people. So I'll see you on Sunday. Take care. Hopefully 2021 will take a little bit of a break in between now and then. Cheers, Dave. He says great session. Cheers, Dave. Yeah, take care, everyone, and I'll see you soon.